to episode 315 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 29th of December 2024. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Howdy.
Graham.
Happy New Year.
And Will.
Hello.
Yes, Happy New Year indeed. Although we're recording this in 2024, it is now 2025. And so we are going to look back at the predictions that we made for 2024, and then we'll make some new ones for 2025. So, Will, your first prediction was the financial collapse of a significant cloud vendor, all services just shut off without warning, no way to recover data. And you said it wasn't going to be a sort of AWS or Azure-sized one, but more kind of your OVH, DigitalOcean, Linode-sized one, and this did not happen.
No, it did not. I mean, we should be grateful. But no, I figured that the market was going to really tighten up, that the lack of free money was going to cut investment and somebody somewhere would suffer. But no, we got away with it.
Yeah, so unfortunately, no points. You said Amazon's custom OS is revealed to be Arch with some patches for hardware support. And you said a well-known security flaw gives everyone root access and everyone, even Phelim, buys an Echo device to hook up to their home automation system.
Can confirm do not have A home automation system, or B, an Echo.
Another miss. Way back at the start of the year, Amazon were talking about replacing the OS on their Fire TV sticks and I assume Alexa devices with their own homegrown OS. And I have heard precisely nothing more about it since about last January.
Yeah, neither have I. So I'm sure that they've been working on it. But the idea was that the Fire Sticks are not going to run Android. So you're not going to be able to install all sorts of cool apps on it.
Yeah, like you say, surely they are still working on it. Perhaps it was more difficult or likely much more expensive than they were expecting. And then they have got that rich app ecosystem which they are able to leverage, especially on things like the Fire tablets. So maybe it just wasn't worth it. Maybe it's been cancelled. But I'm grateful that I can still sideload things onto my Fire TV stick, put it that way.
All right, and you also said Google cancels something huge in order to divert the money to AI projects. And you said something like Gmail, which I scoffed at, essentially. And I looked at Killed by Google, and yeah, they've killed a few things this year, but not anything of great significance.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, who knows what they've killed? But then, of course, that website knows exactly what they've killed. Yeah, nothing significant. Another 0 points for me.
Well, they have laid people off and diverted that money to AI. So maybe half a point. I don't know. What do we think?
I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take anybody getting any points against you, so that's fine by me.
All right, Graham, you said Epic Games will announce official Linux support.
This didn't happen. I think Epic had quite an interesting year. I mean, kind of winning against Apple and also later on with Android and third-party app stores, but that's got nothing to do with this. However, what we talked about a little while ago in terms of Microsoft and Windows kernel not being allowed to have, in cheating systems, maybe this will change for 2025, although it won't be one of my predictions.
I had a prediction that was related. I said we'll get a completely new Steam Deck, not just a minor spec bump. It'll have similar battery life to the original, so worse than the OLED, which will then be the base model. But it'll play all the big games. Anti-cheat bullshit will be worked out behind the scenes, and only a couple of games won't work well on it, all on Linux. Well, I think I definitely get a point for that. The great new Steam Deck X.
Over this holiday period, I've been playing Cyberpunk on my Steam Deck, and I cannot believe a game like that runs so well on a Steam Deck, but it does.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And on the OLED, it's with HDR.
Jesus.
Wow.
But it is only 720p, isn't it?
It is, and it's 30 FPS, but it works. Honestly, I've got a 75-inch display in the living room. I can't be bothered. It's just so convenient to turn on the Steam Deck and go into Night City.
So yeah, no points there for us, unfortunately. I listened back to our last one, and this one, I said you're not having a point. You said Plasma 6 will be the best KDE release ever. GNOME will continue to suffer. And I said that's just so obvious that it's going to be the best release ever that you don't get a point.
Yeah, but we couldn't have always said that about KDE, could we?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a fair point.
Living in KDE 2 land, we'd be sitting here going, KDE 3, it's going to be a walk in the park.
Well, tell that to the Trinity users. Although that was a fork of 3.5, I think.
Yeah, and that came much later. It was painful, and then we had 4.
4 was really painful, though.
Yeah.
Phelim, Broadcom pisses off its VMware user base, KVM shines. The year of Linux on the vert top. Maybe with a bit of luck, if Will's first prediction comes true, people might learn and hybridize more.
I mean, I think it kind of came through. I mean, VMware definitely did piss off its user base, and KVM obviously shines. Whether it has been Linux in the virtual desktop, I mean, come on, every cloud vendor is running Linux. I think I'm clearly winning this.
Well, I think this is actually a solid point because VMware has pissed a lot of people off, and Proxmox is doing better than ever in terms of people using it, seemingly, at least anecdotally. And that uses KVM, doesn't it? So
it does.
Yeah, I think this is basically a pretty easy, solid point. It was pretty obvious that it was going to happen, but you get the point nonetheless.
I think this is actually the first time I've ever gotten a point, as ridiculous as that sounds.
After all these years, it's your first point. Surely not.
I think it might be.
All right, you also said several big FOSS names leave Red Hat as the IBM corporate creep continues.
Yeah, I didn't see any of this.
No, I don't think there are any huge FOSS names that have left Red Hat. I'm sure plenty of people have, but none of the kind of, household FOSS names, so no points here. You also said, based on this, a renewed focus on freedesktop.org starts to gain momentum.
Haven't seen much of that either.
All right, and you also said, Musk kills X. He'll pretend it's some sort of anti-ad BS or how poorly the EU is treating him, but really it's doing what his pal Peter Thiel wants and stopping it ahead of the election. Well, completely wrong.
Completely wrong, but he has killed X. I think he's killed it. In a metaphorical sense.
You were specifically saying that he was going to shut it down, though, which is very much not happened.
Fine.
All right, well, I said, one of the major distro vendors will release a version that's got more proprietary code than FOSS in it. It will cause a huge stink, but it will be a quiet success. And I said, it might be AI bullshit, and then I kind of ummed and ahed and said, yeah, probably AI bullshit. I don't think this counts, but Red Hat launches RHEL AI for enhanced enterprise AI apps. This is not a win, is it? This is like all open source shit in this AI bullshit version of RHEL. So no points for me then. Graham, your next one then. Movie and music piracy will begin to become a problem again due to enshittification, and you think we'll see continued growth in self-hosting services or third-party email and data?
Yeah, I've just been trying to look for some data to back this up, and I can't find any, so I don't think it's a win. However, my personal download habits during 2024 have very much reflected this, and I don't see it changing.
Watching Big Buck Bunny every night.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But I mean, I'm so pissed off now. Amazon Prime adverts on their movies, Netflix, which we still pay for, restricted bandwidth, the things not staying on there, Spotify music disappears, and also it's shit to the artists. This is not the future that these services promised us, and I think it'll continue.
Well, there's been a lot of talk about dodgy Fire Sticks. So I was reading about this, right? Apparently what happens is people sell you a Fire Stick, or you buy one and give it to them and they load it up with the software. And then you can just get like all the sport and movies and everything. And the sport thing is really what is attracting attention from the authorities. And they're starting to crack down on this all over Europe. Because it's not like torrenting or Usenet that people are doing. It's streaming, isn't it? People are just of that streaming mindset. I don't know who pays for the bandwidth and everything for these dodgy streams, but nevertheless, that's how people do it nowadays, seemingly.
Yeah, I have read that. It's like Daily Mail pub exit nodes for Sky Sports Services in the local pub. Yeah, who'd have thought that would become a thing? That's very like William Gibson, cyber future, beer stains and cigarette ash and Sky Sports streaming to their internet connection. But it does seem to be happening. But then the costs and the limitations that those like public venues suffer for having that kind of live stuff, it's extortionate, the amount of money they have to pay just to show a football game.
And you also said the AI hype does not subside. This one, I definitely said you're not having a point for this because it's so fucking obvious.
I know, it's true. They weren't very imaginative, but I couldn't see it. I feel a little bit different, and maybe we'll get onto that. But yes, it hasn't subsided.
No, it's not subsided at all. But perhaps more on that in a bit. So Will, no points. Me, no points. Phelim, 1 point. And Graham, I suppose you can have half a point for the piracy thing. And I suppose half a point for the AI thing, even though it was obvious. So it looks like Phelim and Graham, you both share the win at 1 point each. Well done.
It's as good as I can ever hope for.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Sandfly Security. Go to sandflysecurity.com. Sandfly Security's agentless threat detection identifies Linux threats without requiring software agents, ensuring no performance impact or system risk. Sandfly's endpoint detection and response monitors and detects thousands of compromise indicators across Linux environments. Sandfly Security tracks and audits SSH keys to identify unauthorized or risky key usage and identifies weak, default, or compromised passwords to enhance security hygiene. With cloud, on-prem, and hybrid support, you can secure Linux servers across all environments, including embedded devices and isolated networks. Deploy it immediately with SSH access with no need for risky agent installations. Sandfly Security is compatible across architectures with support for AMD, Intel, ARM, MIPS, and Power CPUs on a wide range of Linux distributions. So support the show and try Sandfly Security out today at sandflysecurity.com. That's sandflysecurity.com. Let's do our predictions for 2025 then. Will, what's your first one?
My prediction is that the AI bubble is going to burst, and not only is it going to burst, it's also going to take some VC funds down with it. The VC funds that have invested and raised huge amounts of money, who seemingly are just throwing money blindly at anyone who can put AI on a definition sheet, and they're just throwing their money away. I don't think AI will go away altogether, so I think it will reform around, for example, documentation search engines, so you can put an AI bot up that understands your product and is able to answer simple questions about it. And I think that things like Copilot are going to continue to exist, and I think that they are a pretty useful tool. But the general AI bubble will burst and the pain will ripple around that entire ecosystem for quite a long while. And in the process of doing that, I think that the AGI idea will be finally given up on.
I wrote my predictions before I saw yours, and one of mine is very similar. The arse is going to fall out of the crypto and AI grifts, but the quantum grift is going to go bananas. The arse falling out of AI will massively impact the VC world. How is anyone's guess? So that is curious that we both had similar thoughts there. And yeah, it's all propped up by VC, isn't it? So when the arse falls out of it, I don't know if it's necessarily going to take VC funds down or whether they'll just have to divert their money elsewhere. So it might be a good thing, maybe.
I think you're both right, essentially, about AI. But I don't think anyone's going to be prepared to admit it. And financially prepared to admit it. They'll find another way of reframing what's happening and what's going on. I know that you're kind of hinting at this, but it's almost like what we've seen with crypto. Just talk your way through it. And I think that's what we'll see. I don't know if you want to mention it, but I, in the hope of getting a whole point this time, I've made the prediction that the AI hype does not subside. And I think the only option for them is to keep hyping it up even more. I think in reality, everything that we consider kind of middle-of-the-road shit will be done by AI. Shit music, shit art, shit writing, all of that, which people are paid to do, will now be done by AI, and we'll just see the world get even shitter. But the AI hype will not subside.
I just feel like the bubble has to burst eventually. And it feels like it's on the verge of it now because it has to keep improving. Otherwise, you can't get more and more money from the VCs. And it's not going to improve without just ridiculous amounts of compute. And that costs billions and billions of dollars. And they're firing up fucking nuclear power plants and shit again. Like 3 Mile Island, they're going to recommission that for fuck's sake. And eventually, the bubble has to burst when people realize that it's not going to be this AGI thing, as Will said.
But don't you think it's far too early to admit any of that? It'll be 5 years away, or not 10, when the world's moved on to quantum or whatever it is you're saying is the next grift.
Well, quantum is, I predict, going to be the next bubble, basically. And no doubt there will be fucking AI quantum on the blockchain. Someone will just combine all three of them. But yeah, I seriously think that quantum is the next bubble. And maybe I'm way too early with this, but I feel like over 2025, we're going to see more and more money going to quantum where it was going to AI before. And whether that is the bubble bursting or the arse falling out of it, whatever you want to call it, maybe not. Maybe you're right, Graham, and maybe I'm just being overly optimistic here.
I think the problem is I'm now seeing everything like a blockchain in a bad way. You know, all you have to do is keep talking about it and keep talking about it more. That's all you have to do. The money's being invested in these things from other things, and it doesn't seem to run out.
It will eventually, though, surely.
They'll just print more money.
Probably, yeah. All right, let's get it back to more Linux stuff. Phelan, what's your first one?
I think this is the year of the user-funded desktop. For a long time, we have bemoaned the fact that, if only people would fund these things, they could survive, or we have struggled to come up with a good business model. I think come the end of last year with KDE, I think we're onto something now. I think people are kind of fed up with the status quo of, people being burnt out, whatever. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this where people are willing to put their money behind the products that they like and just go for it. And I think projects are going to stop being afraid to ask for actual money, which I think has been the big problem for up till now, where people are just like, can we ask for that? I'm not sure. But yeah, I think we've seen that people are willing to pay the money. So I think we're going to see some really good gains of this next year.
A cultural shift, if you will.
Yes, perhaps.
I would very much like to see this. I'm not sure how extensive it's going to be, but I think we will see more and more examples of it, definitely.
I think we're going to see it from Gnome as well, because I think they are in a spot of bother with how finances all went at the end of last year, and I think they're going to have to just put the proverbial can around and say, please, can you chuck some cash this way?
Yeah, I think you're right. Graham, you've got one about Bing.
Yeah, so a little bit like the increase in piracy last year in 2024, this is something from my own experience. I am so pissed off with Google search results for a variety of reasons, but the Gemini results at the top of everything really pisses me off. It's often wrong. I don't want it. You can't turn it off. But the search results in Google themselves, I found increasingly poor, and I'm using Bing. Had written Bing starts to massively encroach on Google search territory. Since looking at the statistics for Google's search dominance, and that's not going to happen. It's like 90% or more easily, and Bing's a small percentage. But I do feel that Google will start to see its future without easy search dominance and will become more predictable and conservative, but not in a way of reducing its investment in AI, which will ultimately make it more shit. And I think we'll see that.
And you've written, history will show this as the beginning of Google's long decline.
Yeah, because what's Google got if it hasn't got its search results? And I feel like it's lost its way. I think AI could be good. What we're calling AI could be good for search results, but not in the way that it's being used, not in the way that it's being forced on us. It's not being tested in Google's dominated search in an autocratic way for far too long. And I think the opportunity is there for someone to just deliver better quality in search results. And I'm happy to accept that it's Microsoft-owned Bing, which is, something new for me.
Could it be a more successful search engine?
It's the sound of found.
What's the number for 999 in the UK?
999.
Because I think Graham may have died.
Yeah, I can't see this.
Okay, then I haven't said they're going to dominate. This time next year, I hope I've found some meaningful evidence to show that this happened in some way.
Maybe you should run a Bing search for it, but I don't think you'll get any valid results.
I feel better from having said it, so that's it.
I don't see it, I'm afraid. I think that people will just put up with it. Google is too entrenched now. It is literally the verb to search for things online.
Yeah.
I think that is an incredibly large boat to turn around. I think it's going to take multiple years of it being shit for there to be enough momentum for people to switch away to something like Bing.
I've only had a Hoover once, but I've done hoovering quite a long time in my life.
Maybe.
No, you're right. I'm just being fanciful and I've had a couple of beers.
It's that time of year. Okay, this episode is sponsored by ServerMania. Go to servermania.com/LNL to get 15% off dedicated servers recurring for life. ServerMania is a Canadian company with over a decade of experience building high-performance infrastructure hosting platforms for businesses globally. ServerMania has up to 20 gigabits per second network speeds in 8 locations worldwide for optimized global reach. They have flexible custom server configurations tailored to unique needs, as well as a personal account manager offering free consultations. With 24/7 live chat support and support ticket response times under 15 minutes, you can always keep your systems running smoothly. Alan Jude from 2.5 Admins has been a happy ServerMania customer for over 7 years, so support the show and join him at a hosting provider that truly delivers. Get 15% off dedicated servers recurring for life at servermania.com/LNL and use code LateNightLinux. That's servermania.com/LNL and code LateNightLinux. All right, I wonder where I got this one from. Malicious code will be found in a key bit of FOSS infrastructure that makes the XZ thing look small and insignificant. The bottom line is we have not learnt from the mistakes that caused XZ to happen, I don't think. And I foresee an even bigger version of that actually gets further along the supply chain, as it were, onto actual production machines.
I worry that this is a dead cert. As things get more and more complicated and build systems become more and more automated, it seems inevitable that at some point something will get through the relatively straightforward tests, and this time the interested guy on his weekend just wondering why something is unusual won't exist, and before you know it, it'll be pushed out to millions and millions of servers. I think this is a very, very real risk.
I certainly can't argue with it because, I think I predicted this a couple of times, and I think I've got a bit of a similar one this year as well. But I think malicious actors within government-backed corporate entities might be an issue as well.
Yeah, you said that cyber warfare goes rampant.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a bit of a, we have the gift of the orange one this year again for the next 4 years, but we also have the war in Ukraine, and we have had 2 events in the last month where a Chinese ship dragged anchor, broke a whole load of Baltic cables, and a Russian ship also did the same thing. I think we're going to have a bit of a fun year with it.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
I did make this exact prediction a few years ago, but I think it was just jumping the gun.
Yeah, I think just recycle it every other year and then you're bound to hit one of these years.
Did I mention that Canonical's going up for purchase?
And Will, you've got one that's very much related.
Yeah, as Phelan was saying, I think that Russia will cut off a significant part of Europe from the internet by a combination of dragging anchors and breaking physical cables and attacks on infrastructure, but also via software hacks. What will become of this? What will happen when everyone is pretty much convinced that Russia has overtly cut off parts of Europe from the internet? And what I suspect will happen is we'll all pretend it didn't happen so that we don't actually kick off World War III. But I think that it is inevitable that Russia will get more trigger happy with their physical infrastructure and software hacks.
What's your favourite phrase, Will? Keep it light.
Happy New Year!
I'm kind of looking forward to getting my modem out and trying to get the ham radios out and doing peer-to-peer networking with Will across 50 miles with a microwave dish.
Graham, you've got a gaming one.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned a new Steam Deck from last year, and I think that could have happened, and I think there's a lot of kind of metadata around to suggest that Valve is close to releasing a Steam Deck 2, but even closer, I think, to releasing a new VR headset. The Valve Index was released in 2019, and while VR is still very much languishing, I think Valve is still committed to it as a platform. Steam VR has been updated constantly, and there were big updates in 2024. And I think the combination of what they've got in terms of the Steam VR hardware, the integrated AMD, the high performance, the battery life. So a new iteration of this in a headset that also is exceptionally good at streaming from a PC, which is based on the same kind of SteamOS platform. I think we'll see this in 2025.
I saw an interesting headline. Valve makes more money per employee than Amazon, Microsoft, and Netflix combined.
Wow.
Because it's such a small company. And I think that if anyone is going to make the VR thing work, it's going to be Valve, because they're not going to have all these fucking ridiculous dreams of like the metaverse and all that. They're just going to be, here's some really cool games that you can play on VR. And a bunch of gamers, a relatively small number of gamers going to be like, fuck yeah, amazing VR games. Not like, oh, we're going to have it in every workplace and you're going to have meetings with people and all that shit.
Yeah, I think so. I think, they're going to keep checking in on VR. I think it's been 5 years, 6 years since the index. And I think they're ready to kind of check in on VR and keep it ticking over while technology moves forward, because there will become a time where they won't have the problems. But they're quite happy to keep along. I think they're quite happy to keep along with it, especially when all the developments are kind of aligned with the other things they're doing, such as SteamOS and Steam Deck hardware, which I think all will use the same parts.
Yeah, well, my tween nephew has got one of the VR. He's got the standalone one. I think it's the Meta one or whatever. And he's just never off it. It's quite dystopian, actually, to see him just in the living room with this headset on. And he does this like pub fights game or something.
Oh, I've seen that. That actually looks like fun, to be quite honest.
Drunken bar fight.
That's it, yeah. And yeah, he absolutely loves it. There is definitely a niche for this, and that is gaming. So yeah, I could see this happening, definitely.
I've also as cheekily put in on the same one that I think we'll see other devices running SteamOS, other handheld devices, but also other PC devices maybe.
We've literally reported on that with evidence, so you're not having a point for that. That's definitely happening.
What? Handheld devices running SteamOS?
Yeah. There's one from Lenovo coming out very soon. I think there's a press conference. It's probably happened already by the time people are listening to this.
Well, I get the point early then.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. Fadim, you've got one about Firefox and I've got one as well. So what's yours?
Right. So I think, that new board that signed up, I think they're going to resign by the end of the year because of the epic shit show that is being involved with Mozilla. And so much so that I believe that devs will sort of start getting sacked, leave, whatever. And I think we're going to see a proper, genuine developer-first fork. I think I might be a bit early with that, but I think the board definitely is just checking out this year, I think.
What you've done there is written down what I said last episode.
Well, you can't expect me to remember back to last episode. That was a whole week ago.
Yeah, that was 2 pisses ago.
Well, I mean, every time I pee, I do wipe my memory.
Well, my one is that Firefox market share will stabilize, and it might even slightly grow.
0 to 0.001 then, yeah?
Yeah. But instead of it like just plummeting and just continuing to go down and down and down, I think that, I don't know what's going to happen in the background or whatever, but I think that with the AdBlock staff and the privacy stuff, I think that it's going to at least stabilize in terms of market share.
Oh, I'd be happy for that to happen, I'll tell you that.
Well, it would be a win, wouldn't it? Standing still would be a win.
Well, just getting rid of to be quite honest, the board has always been a problem, I think. So, to see them out the way.
Stopping the rot.
Yes, that's the one.
Well, we'll see. I don't think I'll be getting a point for that, but you never know. Will, you've got a Tesla one.
Yeah, I think it's about time somebody roots their Tesla and starts running their own custom firmware on it. And when they do that, I suspect it will go horribly wrong and a Tesla will end up in someone's front room.
How will we be able to tell from all the other Teslas that have ended up in someone's room?
There's a fair point.
Their self-driving thing, or their quote self-driving thing, is so shit that it probably happens already.
We've talked about it before, but the idea that something designed almost exclusively on Californian roads would be able to translate to the twisty-turnies of where Phelim lives is just laughable, and it isn't going to work for years, if ever. I can understand it will work on the highways and the motorways, which it pretty much already does. But if somebody gets access to run their own code in there, their own self-driving code, it's just going to be an absolute disaster.
Oh yeah, the famous winding country lanes of South Dublin.
To be quite honest, I would put money that a Tesla wouldn't be able to cope. Because with the state of some of the roads, yes.
Fair enough. Okay, this episode is sponsored by Tailscale. Go to tailscale.com/LNL. Tailscale is the easiest way to connect devices and services to each other, wherever they are. Everyone these days has a VPN as a sponsor, but Tailscale isn't like those. This isn't about hiding your browsing habits from coffee shop owners, and it's not about watching Netflix in another country. Tailscale is a proper VPN for connecting your devices securely. It's great for companies, and it's great for self-hosters. Tailscale is incredibly easy to set up. I got it up and running on 2 machines in just a few minutes, without opening any ports. Then I could SSH from one machine to another as if they were on the same LAN, even though they were on different sides of London. Tailscale is WireGuard on easy mode, and that's why loads of the Late Night Linux family hosts use it. Tailscale's personal plan will always be free, so support the show and try Tailscale out for free today. You'll get up to 100 devices and 3 users for free at tailscale.com/LNL with no credit card required. That's tailscale.com/LNL. I think there's going to be no big drama with desktop Linux. I think there's going to be lots of incremental improvements, but there's going to be no forks, no storming off, and GNOME and KDE will progress. Smaller desktops will creep towards a Wayland future. I think we're going to see a very quiet but productive year in desktop Linux.
I think that's a good bet. I think we're at a kind of stable plateau now where we can just make small incremental updates and everybody understands that that is the way that stability and security are maintained and added. I suspect that we'll see growth in the immutable desktop product line. We know that Canonical are working on one. We know that the Bluefin project already exists. I suspect that they will hit more mainstream releases, let's say, but they're still going to be packaging the typical desktop environments, which are now in this stable phase where things are added in small pieces. So I think you're right.
Yeah, I think the big stuff is happening there with the immutable, composable, whatever you want to call it, desktops, and the solidifying of Wayland. And yeah, I just don't think we're going to see drama like we have seen previously with, forks and storming off and that sort of thing. Well, related to that, I think that by the end of the year, I'll be daily driving something other than XFCE on my main machine. Controversial, and I don't want it to happen. And I could just literally do it for the point, but I'm not going to do that. I foresee myself just giving in by the end of the year.
Not moving to CDE. Motif.
Oh, no, probably something like GNOME. I keep meaning to, every episode I say this, but I keep meaning to talk to Will again about how you managed to get GNOME more XFCE-like. Maybe that is the solution. But we'll see. I just foresee myself not using XFCE. I really want to be wrong about this, but we'll see.
I can't see you doing it. It's so part of your personality that we'd lose a big part of you if you switch from XFCE.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't want it to happen, but
okay.
I feel like it'll have to happen eventually.
I might have to make one of my predictions that you switch to a different desktop and then switch back to XFCE before the end of 2025.
All right. Okay. Graham, you think that KDE's official distro will become the cool kid on the block?
So both KDE and GNOME in 2024 have announced that they'd like to have their own kind of official distributions. And this is something we've talked about before. There's obviously Neon, which is very closely affiliated with the KDE project and Plasma. But I really think that KDE is going to make a big success of this. And it will. What I want to say is I think it will become a bona fide Linux distribution, one that we talk about alongside of Arch and Ubuntu and Fedora and SUSE, and one of the mainstream distros. I mean, of course, Ubuntu is very closely linked to GNOME, and so is Fedora, but we haven't really had a desktop-owned distribution. It seems like such an obvious idea. I really like the idea. Well,
we've had Neon, as you said.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be a good thing, I think, for the overall desktop ecosystem.
Yeah, and it gives especially KDE the opportunity to say this is the default configuration, or for them to use it as a mirror, saying, God, this is our default configuration. To create what they want as the default experience and kind of express themselves through the distribution for other distributions and other users to follow, if they choose to.
I just really hope they can muster a team behind it for all the things like security updates and things like that. I just hope that people aren't sort of going, oh, yeah, we should have our own distro, and thinking more of a advertisement hoarding rather than this has to be reliable and secure without any failure.
Will, you've got one about solar panels.
Solar panels have seen incredible uptake now. The price has plummeted. They're getting installed everywhere. We're about to see the new perovskite-based solar panels be launched. It's a new type of solar panel, which is much more efficient, but has been very difficult to predict the longevity. I think that most of those problems are solved now, to the point where I think it will become mandatory in one of the G7 countries that all new builds have to have solar panels on them. Like, absolutely, there'll be one solar panel, but they will have to have solar panels on there. And I think that we'll also see nuclear power stations, small modular nuclear power stations, become cheap and easy to build, and even cheaper than gas turbines. And so we will have lots and lots of green electricity, and AI won't be there to gobble it all up. And so finally we'll start seeing cheap electricity, green electricity, and maybe on the horizon, a chance for mankind to redeem itself.
You're a dreamer, Will. You're a real dreamer. Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back next year for us, next week for you, when it'll probably be news and stuff, but who knows what's going to happen between now and then. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelan.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.